Hey there, thinkers! Welcome back to Critical Hit. My name is Est, and Disney, typically the poster child for, corporate virtue signaling and hollow pandering, has surprisingly managed to make a decision that doesn't immediately reek of agenda pushing. Now, according to The Hollywood Reporter, Pixar's upcoming animated series Win or Lose has had its transgender story quietly scrubbed, leaving the middle school co-ed softball team, the Pickles, to focus on their championship run without a subplot that would, most likely, inevitably, stir up debates and distract from the core story. Like, for once, it actually kind of feels like Disney prioritized storytelling over points in the cultural discourse, and frankly, it's a move that nobody saw coming. This is the same company that routinely shoehorns representation into projects that feel way more performative than, sincere, alienating said audience while patting themselves on the back for their bravery. But in this rare instance, they have chosen to dial it back and deliver something that might actually resonate with a broader audience. Like, imagine that, focusing on relatable family-friendly themes instead of using a children's show as a platform for adult social issues. Like, it's almost as if Disney remembered who their core audience is. Like, families are looking for entertaining, heartfelt stories, not lectures. And of course, this decision is not going to win them any awards in the usual crowd of activists who demand that every piece of media carry a message. Like, you can already hear the outrage machine gearing up, lamenting the erasure and accusing Disney of caving to the public pressure. But let's be real here. This move doesn't make them saints. It's not as if Disney suddenly grew a moral backbone or found a new commitment to neutrality. It's far more likely that they realized that the recent string of box office and streaming flops, many of which were plagued by overzealous messaging, weren't doing their shareholders any favors. However, for now, Disney deserves some cautious credit for doing something right, even if it was for the wrong reasons. Keeping Win or Lose focused on universal themes of teamwork, friendship, and growing up could actually make it a series worth watching. And if it spares families from yet another divisive storyline that sparks Twitter wars and alienates half the audience, well, it's a win for everyone. So here's for hoping they actually stick with this newfound common sense. Though with Disney's track record, it's anyone's guess of how long it will actually last. However, I have a few things to say here, but before I do, we have a small request. If you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button, smashing that like, and ring the bell to be notified for our next video. We would greatly appreciate this, because this will help us appease those YouTube algorithm gods. So we thank you. Now let me give you our thoughts on this, and let's get into this article from The Hollywood Reporter. Alright, this series, an 8-episode dive into the juicy off-field lives of players, parents, and umpires, originally had a transgender character whose dialogue touched on gender identity because, life is messy and complex, and storytelling just reflects that. But Disney, in a move that practically screams, let's just keep this as bland and uncontroversial as possible, decided to quietly cut those lines. Their official statement to The Hollywood Reporter came wrapped up in parental diplomacy. Parents prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms. Which, when we run that through corporate PR to English translator, reads more like we would rather avoid a social media dumpster fire and a hashtag boycott, so let's keep it safe and sanitized and controversy free. Thanks! So the transgender character will still grace Win or Lose, just minus any dialogue that actually might, make it obvious that they're, transgender. It's almost as if Disney tried to play the ultimate game of representation hide and seek. So sources say this creative decision was made months ago, but true to form, Disney, the reigning monarch of cryptic PR doublespeak, refuses to explain why. So maybe they're just hoping that we'll all applaud the gesture of inclusion while ignoring the fact that they stripped away everything meaningful about it. So bold strategy, Disney. Really cutting edge stuff. So Disney has been stumbling through the LGBTQ plus representation like a kid on a balance beam, like thinking that they're acing it, but actually they're one step away from a disaster. So let's take a little trip down memory lane, shall we, with their most groundbreaking moments. First, there was Lightyear, with its brief same-gender kiss that was more of a blink and you'll miss it moment than an actual game changer. That was followed by Strange World, a film with an openly gay lead character that practically begged for attention. But instead of causing a media frenzy in the best way, both films were met with an outrage from the audience. And the results? Lightsabers scraped together a modest $226.4 million globally, while Strange World limped to a pathetic $73.6 million. Yikes. Turns out the world isn't exactly clamoring for groundbreaking representation when it comes wrapped in a lackluster plot and a thinly veiled agenda. And it's not just the international market that's struggling to get on board. If Disney's latest approach is any indication, the US isn't exactly lining up to throw confetti either. So much for those bold box office shattering moves. The whole transgender storyline debacle is just the beginning of this dumpster fire. On top of that, whispers have been circulating that Disney shoved an episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur straight into the vault. One that just so happened to feature a trans character. Disney's quick to claim that the delay had absolutely nothing to do with the content. But really, who's still buying that? Like, we're all adults here. Meanwhile, Disney's perfectly fine with rolling out LGBTQ plus content in its more mature properties like Poise and Fire Island, where the audience is probably a little more open-minded, and the suburban moms won't be clutching their pearls in horror. They know exactly where they can push boundaries without causing a mass exodus from Disney+. It's almost like they're selectively progressive, depending on where their money comes from. Oh, and if you're looking for an extra dose of awkward, the voice actress for the Win or Lose character in question just so happens to be transgender herself, Chanel Stewart, who was cast in the role at the ripe age of 14, only to find out that the storyline's erasure when she hit 18. Like, talk about a slap in the face. Like, in her own words, she's very disheartened by the whole thing. She hoped that her role would serve as a beacon of empowerment for trans youth, showing that they too could see themselves represented in media. Instead, she got a front row seat to Disney's finest corporate damage control in action as the company scrambled to distance themselves from any hint of actually doing something meaningful. I mean, like, what a heartwarming journey. Oh, and if you're sitting there wondering why Win or Lose got its release date pushed, here's the scoop. Disney had a little light bulb moment and decided to cash in on Inside Out 2's gravy train with a cool $1.7 billion in global earnings. It's clear that emotions are a hot commodity. Authenticity, though, not so much. So instead of letting Win or Lose compete in a crowded market, Disney conveniently bumped it to February 2025. This way, it can slide under the radar, neatly timed to let the controversy simmer down while they rake in more cash. Because clearly, fixing a bad PR situation is best done by pretending it never happened. I'm actually glad to see this happening. This is another Disney move that shows a strong commitment to ensuring not to offend anyone. Like, they've really embraced a version of inclusivity that is easy for everyone to digest, making sure it's accessible to the broadest possible audience. And of course, this means that the stories of the trans community, which might require more nuanced discussion, might be sidelined, as they're seen as too complicated for younger audiences to understand. I mean, it will be interesting to see how Disney continues to focus on making content that's universally palatable, even if it means oversimplifying important issues. However, those are my thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And hey, before you go, subscribe to our channel, smash that like button, and ring the bell to be notified for our next video. As always, this is Est, and I'm signing off now. So I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!